Welcome back to the Own Your Becoming podcast, where we explore the transitions women go through physically, emotionally, and relationally, and how to navigate them with awareness, compassion, and power. Today, we're diving into a topic that many women experience but rarely talk about openly: sex, intimacy, and connection during perimenopause and beyond. For many women, this phase brings discomfort, dryness, loss of libido, or a shift in how desire feels. For couples, it can quietly create distance, one partner wanting connection as before, and the other feeling her body and needs changing. But this season doesn't have to mean loss. It can be a doorway to deeper truth and intimacy. I'm joined today by Luce Beaulieu, a trauma-informed somatic educator and coach for midlife women, an experienced facilitator, and a community builder. Luce is on a mission to change the way we feel in our bodies as we age. She helps women move from feeling anxious, drained, and out of alignment to embodying energy, sensuality, and purpose so they can embrace their most vibrant and powerful years. She's also a mother, a social transformation specialist, a feminist, and an innovator. Hi, Luce. Thank you for
Hi,
coming on my podcast.
you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with you telling us a bit about how you got here, what brought you to this work, and what inspired your focus on pleasure and intimacy.
hmm Yeah, so as for so many things in life, for me, it was about my own menopause transition, which was extremely difficult. I didn't think it was going to be because I had been really taking care of my hormonal health and my balance since my early 40s. And even in my late 40s, I was still feeling really good and was having very few symptoms. And then a series of events happened that really threw me in a spiral that was very intense, very difficult, and very transformational at the same time, because anything that we are able to meet, even if it's very intense, and we take that opportunity for an upgrade, is then something that becomes an initiation. So that was my case. And in the process, what happened is I realized how little support women actually had in this phase of late perimenopause, menopause, and even, early postmenopause. And seeing this and, feeling the impacts of this lack of support really just like changed everything for me. And I decided to make it my mission because I just felt like there's so much embedded power and wisdom and energy in women in general, but especially when we get to midlife, that I thought I cannot let one other woman, go down that path if I can help it. And so it became my life's mission.
During this phase, many women experience pain, discomfort, or just simply loss of sensation during sex. And oftentimes, women respond with a yes when it's really a no, which
Mhm.
can be out of guilt or fear of disappointing their partner. How can women explore ways to have more comfort? And how can couples start this conversation if they're not talking about it?
Yeah, such a huge topic. It's very, very sensitive. Um, so in my experience, what usually happens during this phase of life is that because of estradiol, specifically, all of the hormones start shifting, but the estrogens, and specifically estradiol, when it starts shifting and dropping, what happens is that the tissues lose their elasticity, their suppleness, the lubrication, and about 50% of women will experience some form of discomfort, whether it's vaginal dryness, pain during penetrative practices, or just like this general discomfort. What also happens because of this hormonal shift is what we call libido, which we can also call responsive desire, starts shifting and dwindling or being, what we could say is unreliable. And so this combination with also other things happening in the woman's life, such as she might be having, mood swings. She might be having um, hot flashes. a lot of fatigue, a lot of different things that are just like reducing the vitality in the body also compounds on top of everything else for responsive desire to not be so present as it was before when all the hormones were pretty much, topped up. And so this shift can be really, really gradual, but it can also be very abrupt. And my sense is that in couples where the shift is very abrupt is really the situations where there might be some strife and there might be some need for some form of relational transformation. And so, one way that a woman, just with herself in her own body, can create some more comfort is to go towards practices where she can bring back some blood flow, because that's also an issue, is that with all of these changes, there's a lot less blood flow to the vaginal region, to the clitoris, to the cervix as well. And so, anything that can bring back a lot of blood flow is really, really good. To eat foods that are going to be balancing and that are going to be also bringing some blood flow. Hydration is really, really important. Um, there can also be some pH unbalances that really make sex uncomfortable. So anything that will bring the pH into balance is going to be fantastic. And then, of course, to go for a lot of sleep, because it's proven that even an hour extra of sleep will boost libido by about 25%. So really focusing on sleep. So on these like lifestyle pillars, super important. So that's what a woman can do for herself. And then in terms of the relationship, what's really important is to open the topic. And sometimes it can be hard because you might be, if you're in a long-term relationship, you might have been having sex in a certain way at a certain frequency for years and even decades. And so it can be hard. It can be confronting to sit down and be like, hey, let's talk about our sex life and let's talk about how things are changing and what my new needs are now. And it can be hard because for a lot of women who might have a tendency to go into what we call fawning, so a tendency to people please or to keep the peace, it can be really, really hard and challenging to do that. And so it's important to really check in with yourself to, adopt maybe some self-regulation practices for your nervous system before going into these types of conversations, and to really make sure that both partners are, regulated. It's, not in the middle of a fight. You're both in a calm, quiet place where you have some time to actually discuss it and to go really, really slowly and to be super compassionate with yourself, but also compassionate with your partner in these types of, relational spaces. It can be, because it can be very, very tender.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm curious, in your experience with your clients, have you had clients who who don't talk to their partner about this? And what are the most common reasons why women would not want to talk about it?
hmm So unfortunately, what I've heard a lot, and it's really unfortunate, is a male partner. Usually, it's going to be a male partner who doesn't get it, who doesn't understand. Um, at least in the beginning, because some partners will eventually, understand, that they'll start getting curious. But for some partners, especially in the beginning, it can be like a shock, and it can be very confronting because, for many, many reasons, whether it's social or intimate. And, you know, extreme examples that I've heard are male partners who just insist that whether the person, whether their partner feels good about it or not, like they just need to have sex and that's it, and there's going to be this subtle or overt form of coercion. That is really unfortunate. And, this is something that happens way too often, unfortunately. But I'm going to go into a situation where there is no coercion in the relationship, and we are in a situation of a healthy, bi-directional, where there's like more or less equal power in the relationship. the reason why it might be easier in the beginning to just go with it and to just say, okay, let's just do it, is because even for the woman, she doesn't even know exactly what's going on because there's very little information about perimenopause and menopause in general, or there is information, but there's a lot of gatekeeping around like the actual information that we need. And we need to do a lot of research to actually like find it. I've been doing that for years, so I know. So the first part is the person might not even know exactly what's going on, and she might not even be able to put words on it for a while. And the other partner not necessarily knowing what's going on with their female partner might just be going with the flow as usual, which, again, if you're in a long term relationship, which we tend to do, especially in sex after a while. And so, um, overriding your own capacity in sex is something that way too many people do. And in a situation where something disruptive like this starts happening, it's more safe to keep doing more of the same than to rock the boat in a certain way and to start feeling unsafe. And especially for the woman who is going through the throes of perimenopause, it can feel like just one more thing that you need to deal with, and it's probably like the last thing that you want to deal with. And so what might happen is you're just going to go with it and it's going to hurt, or you just might stop sex altogether because your plate is already way too full. And it's like the last thing that you actually want to do with your partner is have that conversation.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned earlier that it's important to have some self-regulation before having this conversation. Can you give us an idea of what does self-regulation look like? How can a woman, what kind of practice, what can she do for the self-regulation before a conversation?
Yeah. So there's so many beautiful practices. One that I really, really love is, and that I can even just like modelize really quick, is just orienting in space. And so, and it's really useful actually for people who work on computers all day. So it's really just looking around the room very, very slowly and to just let things hit your eyes, like to not go towards objects, but to let things come to you and to do that very slowly. So you can do a whole room in like 3 minutes, which is quite a long time when you're when you're like not doing much and you're just like looking around. And so orienting is a practice that really helps the limbic brain really know that, oh, I'm in this space, I'm safe, and I can actually relax. And while you're doing that, you can also do some really deep breathing. And usually, what works really well is to do like a long inhale and then a bit of a shorter exhale. This is like called a down regulating breath because usually when we go into these conversations, our heart rate is going to go up, our breath is going to become much faster, right? And so what we want is we want to down regulate the heart rate and we want to really have the body feel safe here and now.
Yeah, okay. So the idea then is really to bring safety into the body.
Yes,
Yeah.
in the
And
nervous system.
yeah, and I love that practice of this orienting in space. Um it's funny because I've done that without knowing the term. Because when I'm working, it's you're focused, right? You're focused into the thing you're doing. You're projecting all of your energy out. You're not in your body, you're in your mind and out of your body. And so when you're absorbing the environment around you, it's like you're sitting back into your body as opposed to being out there and gripping onto the thing that you're focusing on. And you're just relaxing your grip and just sitting back and then letting everything just soak in. So now
Exactly.
you're in a more relaxed and released state.
Exactly, and you
Yeah.
can even if it's available, like, I can see outside and I can see trees from my window, and I can even see a little bit of sky, to just, like, catch, like, as to send your eyes as far as they can, ideally in the sky, is also very, very regulating,
Yeah.
and if you have something nice, like either some art or some plants, to just, like, focus on that and hang out with the plants visually for a while, like, that's also very, very regulating.
You also mentioned to bring back blood flow.
Yes.
So I'm curious, is that like Kegel exercise? Would that help?
So the thing with Kegels is that it's not good for everyone. So it can be very, very useful for women in postpartum who have had to rework their perineum after birth. But in recent research, and especially, I have a lot of colleagues who are pelvic care specialists and who are very, very advanced in their practices. And they say that for a lot of women, they're already very tight in their pelvic floor. And so Kegels, especially if not done under the supervision of somebody who's an expert in that, can actually make things worse. So what we want is actually with breath, like with a breathwork practice, with a lot of awareness and, and it can be like also very simple exercises, like you can work your glutes, you can be, just like crouching down. You can be doing like some simple yoga, like pelvic yoga moves that like really engage the pelvis can be excellent. But usually when we get to midlife, the problem is not that we need to tighten things, is actually that we need to loosen things, soften, open. And one way that we can bring some blood flow that's really beautiful is to be using our fingers or a wand very slowly because the tissues can be very tender and can be very fragile. But to very slowly, slowly, just like do some self touch that is not necessarily even that sexual, right? So it's really about reconnecting with your yoni. And when I say yoni, I mean everything about our genitals and our womb and our cervix. This is like all of the yoni. Is to really just reconnect with ourselves in a very tender, loving way and to do like some breath work and with the intention for the breath to send some blood flow and some energy nourishment into the pelvic floor, into the pelvic bowl, into all of our beautiful genitals. And in this way, and especially with some self touch, it can bring some blood flow slowly and gently. And then as comfort starts returning, because there's other there's products that we can use for moisturizing, for hydration. There's hyaluronic acid that can be used to replump the vaginal walls. If you have a good, medical practitioner, you can get a DHEA cream. You can get like testosterone gel. There's like so many products that can bring a lot more comfort to the tissues. And then the self practices that are holistic and tantric with breath really do a lot to loosen the pelvic floor, open up the tissues, bring some blood there, and just like allow the yoni to bloom open, but in her own way and at her own rhythm, which will probably be slower than when we were younger. And so it's like this reappropriation, this um, getting to know your yoni again.
Yeah. So the key is in softness, gentleness,
Yes.
and it's not more workout contraction. It's really about, loosening and releasing those contractions
Yes.
and letting the yoni open on her own terms and not trying to force her open. And
Exactly.
yeah, and this, where the intention go, energy goes. And so really bringing your awareness to your yoni. And I don't think many of us do that, bringing our awareness there. So really taking, I guess it's a season where it's inviting you to take the time to reconnect to every part of you, including the parts that you don't usually connect to, and for you to really feel into it and allow her the space and the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I've seen a huge difference in the connection that I have with my yoni from even my mid 40s to now I'm almost in my mid 50s. It's not the same relationship at all.
Mhm. Yeah. So you've gone through this transition yourself. Can you tell us how sex has changed for you through perimenopause and then postmenopause?
Yeah, it was a fun ride. It still is. What was really surprising for me is when I was in my mid 40s, I got this huge burst of desire. I had separated from my son's father and I became single, and I just had this crazy peak of probably hormones. And I just had so much desire. And I had a few years that were very adventurous, that I had a lot of experiences. And it was very different than the sex that I was having, as a married person or even before in my 30s. It was much more intense. The feelings and the climaxes and the orgasms that I was having were a lot more deep and a lot more intense. It's also when I started to have a completely different actually have a relationship with my cervix, and the deeper parts of my yoni. And then when I was in my menopause transition, I became single, and it was a very difficult year and a half. And during that time, I had no desire. I had no libido. I had no practice. I was completely disconnected, I would say, from my yoni during that probably year and a half. And then when I started to get really, really curious and to dive into the world of somatics and of sacred sexuality, I reconnected with my pelvic bowl, with my yoni, and with actually all of my body in a completely different way. And it became a lot more energetic, and it became a lot deeper and more meaningful, and also more nuanced. And so it's not necessarily less intense than it was before. It's intense in a different way. It has this just very sacred depth to it that I never ever experienced before as a younger person. And I really, and this is just one experience, but I've had so many conversations either with clients or with other women who are my age or even older. And for all of us who make this decision to cultivate our relationship with our yoni and to really engage fully into sacred sexuality, what happens is all of our different bodies start coming online a lot more. So not just like the pure sexual, pure genital, which is very tied to the hormones, part of our sexuality, but also our emotional body opens up a lot more. Our energy body opens up a lot more. And for me, there's been also this amazing spiritual awakening. And so my experience has been that all of these different layers start feeding into each other and start to actually weave this um, sensual sex life that feels really multidimensional and sometimes really psychedelic.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay. I know a lot of women entering this season, when you first start experiencing this, either these discomfort or the loss of libido, and then wondering, is this it? Like that's it, right? There's this a fear of like, this is the end of the sex life. This is the end of having desire, and maybe even, you know, I'm assuming part of the reasons why some women don't want to talk about it in the relationship is not wanting to disappoint their partner, that they don't that's how they feel.
Hmm.
Um, if you could speak to a woman entering this season, maybe in her early 40s or starting to notice these types of changes, what would you tell her about, what to expect or how to prepare for this?
Yeah. So I think the first part that's really important to always keep in mind, because as humans, we tend to have this thought that, okay, this is it, I'm stuck in this phase. And then panic sets in, and then like stress, and then it becomes this like stress cycle. So I think the first thing to always remember is nothing is forever. Life is always in cycles, right? And the thing that's really important to know about our sex life in general, but also our orgasmic cycles, our sex life cycles, is that just like, in nature we have seasons, we also have seasons in our sex life. and our orgasm, right? So even if you might be going into an autumn in your sexual cycle, and maybe after that you're going to be, obviously you're going to go into a winter. All of these seasons are very, very important because they really play into each other. So when you go into the autumn, it's because there are other things going on, right? Like when your body is going through a hormonal revolution, you are upgrading, literally your brain is changing. Like I don't know if you know Lisa Mosconi, she's
Yeah.
a neuroscientist, yeah. And so
Yeah.
she shows like literally the structure of the brain changes through menopause. And the hormone revolution is huge. It's even bigger, in my opinion, than teenage years, than adolescence. And so there's so much that the body needs energy for that it's probably not going to have that much energy for sexuality. And so accepting that we are in a certain season and that our body is actually very wise and it's using that energy for other things is really good to keep in mind. That being said, when you have a partner and you want to still be in this partnership, it's super important to have these conversations about seasons and cycles and to, maybe even let them know this is not forever and to start finding new creative ways to have pleasure, but not necessarily, it's not going to look and it's not going to feel the same way as it was when you were younger. And so it's really important to grieve, like it's it's so common that people get stuck in something because they don't grieve the phase that they are actually moving out of. So it's like trying to stay in summer all the time. It's just,
Mhm.
it's not natural. It's not possible, right? So we can go into our autumn and into our winter resisting and being angry and having a lot of strife and a lot of fighting inside of the couple, or we can work together and to have maybe even a grieving process of like, let's grieve that, like, like the summer of our sex life might be over for now. Maybe there's going to be a second summer, a second spring, a second summer, but for now, like this summer is waning down into an autumn. So how can we as a couple work together and accept this autumn cycle and make the most, because autumn is a beautiful season, right? It's a lot slower, there's less sun, but there's also so many beautiful fruits to harvest. There's a lot of beauty. And there's a lot of wisdom in knowing how to surrender, how to let go of things so that something else eventually can be cultivated in its wake. And so it's really about adopting this seasonal wisdom so that things are not so confronting and there's not so much suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess from my own experience, before the shifts started happening, there was a fear of what if I reach that day where I have no more desire. And then when the shift started, what I noticed is there are certain weeks of my cycle, particularly around week 3, and the turning point is very sharp. It's around day 15. Suddenly, I have zero desire. I don't want to be touched. I don't feel sensitive when I'm touched. I don't want, it's like in those moments, I feel like I can totally not have sex for the rest of my life and I'm okay. And then 2 weeks later, it flips back. It's like, no, I love this. I don't know what I was thinking. And so I noticed this, like, it's a very drastic, um, different feeling. And when I'm feeling not in the mood for it, I'm not feeling like I'm sad about it or that because you're not wanting it. So when you're not wanting something, you're not wanting it back because you're not wanting it. So it was very interesting to be feeling that versus not feeling it and imagining that being in a state where you want, imagining that, oh, it's going to happen and fearing that happening. But then once I'm in there, I actually feel fine
Yeah.
not having it. And I even told my partner, I said, uh, honestly, I think I'm one of those women who might just not want to have sex anymore at some point. And his response was interesting. He said, um, how many people cultivate their intimacy continuously? And if we keep cultivating our intimacy, we will find ways. And so I thought, huh, that's interesting. And it's true. Like for a lot of couples, sex just becomes a regular routine thing. He wants it and she has to give it. And it's now the same thing, the same motions, the same repetitive once a week or whatever the routine is. But when you start cultivating the intimacy, and it was also really interesting because for me, sex always meant penetrative sex.
Mm,
For him, sex is the whole, it's like it encompasses a bunch of things, touching, kissing, like a whole range of things. So it was very interesting to learn how to learn a new form, new ways of being intimate. And there's so many ways. And
yes.
so when I'm not feeling physically wanting the usual sex, now it's like it brings us to connect with one another in very different ways, and sometimes in deeper ways. And pleasure, like you said, pleasure is not just around the genital. I mean, it's your whole body. Your whole body can experience pleasure. It could be in your hands, it could be on your face. And um and I've really started to open I guess my range of pleasure, of understanding pleasure. And it was very interesting also in those moments, in those parts of my cycle where it's more painful.
Mm,
um when we start experiencing pain, we contract. It's like, ugh,
contract.
right? We contract as an automatic reaction. And so the more you contract, well, the more it's going to hurt and you're just not going to want it. And so if you keep doing that, then that repetition tells you, I don't want it anymore. So then what I started trying out was, when I started feeling the pain, he would go very slow and
Mm,
I will start breathing,
mm,
and I will just do like a light contraction and release, to just, try to release into it. And at some point, it kind of like goes away. It feels
mhm,
like I open. Um, it'll take a good, maybe 5, 10 minutes. Not that I've counted, but it will take a bit of time to really warm up, to really let my body feel like, okay, this is safe. I am safe. And I just breathe into it and I take it very slow.
mhm,
And then now it's like, okay, I'm training my system to know, okay, it might be, if it's painful at first, it's not warmed up. So let's
mm,
take our time to warm up. And even in those moments, in those periods, I'm also less sensitive around the clit.
mm.
And I remember a few times I felt like, okay, let's just stop. It's not getting anywhere. Like this idea
Yeah.
of getting anywhere. So then I started changing that to say, okay, does this feel now? Does this feel pleasurable? Like someone petting you? Yeah, it feels nice. I mean, it's not the sexual way as you expected or wanted necessarily, but it's pleasurable. Can I just surrender to that pleasure for a moment? Can I just feel it for what it is? Sure, I can. So I learned to, okay, just surrender to what is, how this feels in this moment, even though this doesn't feel what I expect it to feel. And then as I do that, it's like the pleasure slowly comes in, like the sensations slowly comes back.
Mm,
And so that was really a learning lesson for me, that just because when you start, it's not comfortable, it doesn't mean, oh, I can't, just stop. It was really, for me, it was an invitation to soften, to slow down, and to, I guess, yeah, just feel, just bringing your awareness there and be open and curious about this new sensation. I'm feeling things differently, and can I also make this pleasurable?
mhm. Yeah. And you described it so beautifully, like what you're doing is really exploring the range and getting curiosity actually for both partners is so 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 important to relearn what pleasure is in this season, which has different sensations. And I think that as adults, we probably forget that sometimes we need to relearn things. right? It's like what you're describing for me, what was coming up was you're learning to ride a bicycle again, but a different bicycle, right? And it's as if it's the difference between, oh, I can't ride this bicycle, so I'm just not going to ride the bicycle. I'm going to be really frustrated
Right.
versus, oh, I'm going to learn this new bicycle, how it works. And maybe I'm going to try and maybe the pedaling is different. It's exactly the same. So going for sensations is actually such a beautiful practice, and accompanying that with the breath really allows the body to go into this more yin energy. In Taoist tantric practices, there's like the yin channel and the yang channel, the yin way. And so going into yin is really like opening up, softening, and really going slowly and listening and going for feeling all of the nuanced sensations. And then when you clench a little bit, that's like getting like stoking the fire, like going for a little bit of yang. And so doing that dual pedal break of like a lot of yin and then a little bit of yang to like stoke the fire is a really beautiful practice when, you want to open up to penetrative sex, but there's some discomfort there. So what you're describing is absolutely beautiful and perfect. Yeah,
So let's get practical for a moment.
sure.
Vaginal dryness. So
Yes.
that's something almost every woman face at some point. What approaches or solution do you recommend?
hmm So, as I mentioned, it's really important to take care of the whole health of all the pillars, especially sleep, nutrition, hydration, because the reality is that the yoni is like the canary in the coal mine. So if something in the lifestyle pillars is not optimal, the yoni is going to really have it known that, something is going wrong. And so going back to the basics, lots of sleep, lots of nutritious foods that will actually have phytoestrogen in it to really help, especially if you're not on hormonal replacement therapy. Focusing on these foods, focusing on foods that are going to, foods and practices that are going to bring blood flow, going very, very slow. And in terms of products, there are so many products out there now that will either work on the suppleness of the tissues themselves, that will bring some topical, because some people can't go on um, systemic hormonal replacement therapy. But for most people, the topical creams and gels are an option. And so go for that to bring more comfort to the tissues. And then go for the moisturizers, for the products that are really going to help with penetration as well. And to just get really curious if you've never used any of them, if you've never used lube, you don't necessarily know what kind of lube that you're going to like. So maybe try a few brands. If you are still using condoms and you want to try oils, just know that oils can actually break down the latex in condoms. So just be careful with the oils. I actually produced a guide because so many women have so many questions about vaginal dryness. So I do have a guide that I produced that has like a lot of all of this information in it. So anybody who's interested can get in contact with me and get this guide. But yeah, and then like pelvic care, really going for practices that are going to be like slowly open up the yoni. Maybe some de-armoring practices might be interesting, like using a jade egg also is something that can do all of these things, bring the blood flow, bring more comfort, and work the pelvic floor. So a jade egg practice can be like a fantastic way to slowly open ourselves up to have like a little bit more of an active sexual life and penetration. And to just like, again, really relearn your body again in this new season of your life.
I want to talk about this beautiful idea of pleasure as medicine. Can you
Yes.
explain what that means and why pleasure is so healing for women, especially around midlife?
Hmm. Yeah. So what happens, so many things happen at midlife, hormonally, neurologically, emotionally, and socially, and even spiritually. And what tends to happen in our nervous system is that we start to have a lot less capacity and we start to go into sympathetic mode a lot quicker. And we just are, it's very like our capacity becomes very, very narrow, right? And there's like a fragility that is normal because we're going through this transformation phase. So imagine if you are becoming a butterfly, you're in a cocoon and you're becoming a butterfly, you need a lot of comfort and you need a lot of protection for this transformation to occur, right? And so to really feed yourself and nourish yourself, of course, there's like all the lifestyle pillars that we've named, but pleasure is something for the female nervous system that really is like quantum leaps everything else. So if we are able to bring pleasure, oxytocin in our bodies, it's something that for the nervous system just like re-blueprints everything. Because the master hormone for women is oxytocin. If we are lacking in oxytocin and we have too much cortisol, too much adrenaline, and we become imbalanced in this way, is when, our capacity goes even more narrow. And so the more oxytocin, the more pleasure. And the best way to bring oxytocin is closeness, is making love, is cuddles and orgasms, right? So if we are able to go towards pleasure and even go into orgasmic states without even talking about climax and genital orgasms, but pleasurable and orgasmic states, this is something that it's as if you are watering the garden of the female nervous system. It's just probably like the best thing that you can do for yourself.
I'm just curious about this pleasure. What about the pleasure you find in an activity or food? Do they count, or is it more a sensorial, a bodily, closeness, like you're saying, closeness or orgasmic state of pleasure?
Mm, really great question. So, nothing really replaces a hug from another human being because we are mammals and we have nervous systems where, we're just wired that way. We're wired for connection. We're wired for closeness, for attunement, for touch. So nothing really completely replaces physical touch and hugs. But, that being said, people are very, very different. And so for some people, it can be hugging a pet, can have the same effect as hugging a human. It can be a weighted blanket that can be like really almost as if you're receiving a hug. It can create a lot of oxytocin. And in terms of food and beauty and art and all these things, it does bring in a lot of pleasure. And that is in the big family of self pleasure. When I say self pleasure, it doesn't mean masturbation. It means every single act that you can do for yourself and with other people that brings pleasure to yourself, to your being. So everything counts. It can be about listening to fantastic music that, brings goosebumps. It can be about walking in the sunshine and feeling amazing doing it. It can be having a great conversation with a friend. It can be savoring your coffee in the morning and it just like tastes so delicious. All of these acts, all of it is self-pleasure.
Um, you also teach about energy orgasms. This is something that might sound mysterious to many listeners. Can you describe what it is and how a woman might begin to experience it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, it's a whole world. The thing that for me has been really transformational is to feel my sexual energy, or, I should say my life force energy, to really feel it become alive in my body during self pleasure practices. And again, not always and not necessarily genital. And so I've had some experiences where actually I was feeling the energy moving through my chakras. So moving from my root chakra to my ventral, to my solar plexus, to my heart, to my throat, to my third eye, to my crown, and to really feel that this energy was actually circulating in my body. And then other practices where I was actually directing the energy in certain places of my body. And then, so those are two, like, one is more like a microcosmic orbit breathing, breath work, Taoist practice. And then there's actual energy orgasms. So with my partner or with myself, where there's this buildup of sexual energy in the yoni, and then through, an intentional practice, usually it's going to be breath work, I can actually circulate that energy while, sexuality is happening. And I feel it like washing in all of my cells and in my organs. And with practice, I can even orient it. Like, you can actually cultivate your sexual life force energy. And if you're feeling like, oh, I have some tension in my shoulders, for example, that I can direct that energy in my shoulders, and I actually feel the tension dissolving. And I can, if I'm having, trouble with creativity, I can say, okay, I'm going to direct it to my ventral, because this is the chakra of creativity. And so I can, or my womb. And so I can direct the energy there. And it's super hard. It's really hard to describe. It's a bit more of an advanced practice. But once you really start going into this world and you start cultivating your life force energy, pretty much everything is possible.
So it sounds like there's a lot of intentionality. It's not something that just spontaneously happen. You have to cultivate it and bring intention to it.
I mean, if it's something that you want to bring into your life as a practice, yes. However, many, many people have had, Shakti awakenings during sexuality. I think it can happen spontaneously, but if it's something that you truly want in your life and that you want to, age in a way where you're going to actually have energy, and you're going to not run out of it, this is definitely a practice that brings a lot of energy.
I guess for people today who are not familiar with this, would you say that this is something that we should that's good to practice, that women should look into? And why should we, why do it? What are the
I do
benefits
it.
of doing it? Yeah.
Yeah, what's in it?
Why should someone care about this? Like, for someone who's never heard of this before and they think their sex
Totally.
life is fine, why would I want to look into energy orgasms?
Yeah. I mean, if somebody's life is fine, then great, like, maybe you don't need that. But if you are a woman who is in her late 40s or 50s, 60s, 70s, like, there's no limit, there's no upper limit of age. And you do want more energy, and you have projects, and you want to feel on fire, and you want more for yourself, and you want more out of life, and you're not getting it, then the best way to get everything that you want in your life is to cultivate your own life force energy. And for women, that happens in the yoni, in the pelvic bowl, with our sexual life force. And it's something that belongs to us. It is something that we do for ourselves. It's not necessarily easy. It's not going to take, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. It's a daily practice. It's something that we need to cultivate, that we need to sometimes dissolve things to get to, that we need to soften or open to. And we're not taught this in a society. And we live in something, a very fast paced life. So it can be challenging to say, I am intentionally choosing this path, and I'm going to make time for it. I'm going to put it in my calendar. And during this time, I'm going to intentionally go for what I want and not for what's easy. Because the way that I see menopause, especially, is we come to a crossroads, right? We come to this fork where we can either go towards, kind of like give up a little bit. And I'm being a little dramatic, but you kind of like give up, you stop, taking care of yourself, you stop, looking for the thing that's going to bring you life. And you slowly go towards, some form of, giving up and death, right? And then you can refuse that and go completely the other way and say, I'm not going to age. I'm going to get Botox. I'm going to color my hair. I'm going to, you know, keep being like 120 pounds until I die. I'm going to refuse to, that this is even happening. That's another way, perfectly valid. And then there's this middle way that we don't necessarily have a map for. And we don't necessarily see so many women in society who are vibrant, who are filled with energy, and they're in their 50s and 60s, who don't get Botox, who, sport their gray hair. There's more and more, but there's not that many, right? And this map is, and this path, that's what I chose. And a lot of women actually are choosing this a lot more. And it's not easy. It's not easy. So it has to be intentional. And these practices that I'm describing for me are the fundamental bedrock on which my aliveness and my energy is coming from.
You say it's not easy. Can you tell us what are the challenges of this
Mhm.
path?
So I think that, and this is something that actually I realized very recently, is that I think that when we start aging, we have more or less of a trauma response to aging. So we look at ourselves, we start not recognizing ourselves in the mirror. And it can go very fast. Like I went from in my late 40s to the beginning of my 50s, and in the span of like 3-4 years, I looked very different, very very different, right? And so seeing yourself changing so fast and aging in a society that prizes fertility, productivity, being in the summer energy, being this woman who self-sacrifices for others, whether it's at work or with children or in partnership, to suddenly not being fertile, um, somewhat losing the trappings of what is considered in a patriarchal society as beautiful, and definitely having the signs of aging and maturity is really hard and it's really scary. And I was actually looking at a list of what is a trauma response, what is PTSD, and how many, many women, including myself, feel as we start aging, and it is a real trauma response, right? So at various degrees. So the first layer is to dissolve this patriarchal conditioning of othering ourselves and making ourselves wrong for aging, which we can't help. So that's the first one. It's huge. And then the second one is reconnecting to the body, because once we start having these discomforts with the symptoms and the states and the mood swings and everything, we tend to make ourselves wrong and we tend to disconnect from the body. And it's very easy because we work in computers, like you said, like we're like this, and we are really existing on a very narrow, like couple of millimeters of existence in our eyes in the screen. And then our bodies start feeling horrible. We start having hot flashes. So we disconnect even more. And that's the second layer, is reconnecting to the body. And then finally, it's about the sexuality, because of the discomfort, because of, pain during sex. We can also be like, I'm going to also disconnect from my sexuality. So there's these three major layers that I've mapped out in myself and in my work with my clients that are hugely difficult to dissolve and to work with. And that's the work. That's the work of aging. That is the initiation. And once we are able to start getting more comfortable, to reconnect, to get more energy for my sexual life force, then this whole new world starts opening up for us, and life can become very, very, very different.
How can a single woman start exploring pleasure on her own, especially if she's, at a stage where maybe she hasn't been in partnership for a while
Mm,
and she hasn't really, had any self-pleasure practices and maybe not even having a desire for that?
mm,
How can she start building a practice to, awaken that aliveness in her?
yeah. So that was my case, and it's the case of some of my clients as well. And the first part is go with general self pleasure, like we discussed. So, what gives you pleasure right now? Is it savoring a delicious piece of chocolate? Is it, sunbathing and really taking in the sun and really feeling it? So, really starting to go for what are the sensations that you associate with pleasure, generally speaking? and to really slow those down and to really make these moments very vertical where you're going in and you are like almost as if you are making a movie very slow and you're going and look at every single frame of it, right? That's the first part. The second part is to go for not non-sexual, non-genital self-touch. So abhyanga, which is a form of self-massage, can be very, very beautiful. I did that for many, many months, even before I started my self-pleasure practice again, more sexually. So I would just like put a big blanket. I would cover myself in very warm oil and I would just like really massage my body all over very gently, but for a really long time, like for at least half an hour. And it would bring so much oxytocin to my body. And then I would take like a warm shower to get the oil off, but also because it brings like that extra layer of comfort. And then I would just like bundle myself up and I would go to bed. Like that was my evening routine. And then once I've had been doing that for a while, it's as if naturally my body started to open and to get curious and to get a little bit thirsty for a bit more pleasure. And so another practice is breast massage, which is a practice I absolutely love. I do it every single week, sometimes every day. And there's a specific way to do it in the Taoist tradition, but breast massage is beautiful because it resensitizes your breasts, it opens your heart, and for women, it's our positive pole. Like that's how we lead in the world is with the pole of the heart. And so the breasts and opening the heart is a beautiful way to just like open and resensitize the body. And then once we have this heart pole that's open, there's probably going to be a point where the body is going to want a little bit more. And so that's when we can start going down towards the pelvic bowl and to start doing something again that might be just sensual touch, just caressing the insides of the thighs, caressing caressing the mons, caressing the outside of, caressing the labia, the outside of the yoni, and to just do that for as long as you want, for as many days as you want. There's no timeline on this, right? And then once the yoni is sighing with, pleasure and openness, then you can start doing some more internal work, with a wand, with your fingers. And again, a yoni egg practice is something that is really, really amazing, especially for a solo person. And to just like have, and then you can combine everything. You can have like a full session with yourself where you start with a self massage and then you do a breast massage and then you just like massage the outside and then you insert the egg and you do some breath work, so you can really just build from the outside to the inside. That's very important with the female body and nervous system. To feel safe is to always, always start from the perimeter of the body, going slowly towards the center and slowly towards the yoni.
Okay, so slow, gentle, meet yourself where you are today. This is not a goal. The goal is not to orgasm. That is not the goal here.
No, there's
And
no
it's
goal.
right.
Actually, there's one goal. It's just to feel,
Just to feel.
just to
Feel
feel.
what's in this moment and follow the trail of pleasure. And so if today pleasure is in something you eat, you start there. If it's in the sunshine, you start there. And it sounds like this is slowly building up your capacity for pleasure, to feel
Absolutely.
from these things in the surrounding and then into yourself and then into your body. And also building in safety as you are resensitizing yourself to pleasure. You are also bringing more safety in your body.
Yes, and in your nervous system. And when I was talking about capacity, how during perimenopause and menopause, the nervous system tends to naturally just go more into sympathetic. All of these practices really nourishes our capacity and it allows us to go more easily into parasympathetic and to have a lot more capacity so that we can just do life in a way that's like a lot better.
This has been such a rich conversation, Luce. You've helped us really see that midlife sexuality isn't something to fear, but it's something to reclaim and to relearn. To relearn riding like a new bike, like you said. You are a different body today. And it's relearning this new body, how to inhabit this new body, and really discovering the depths of pleasure that is actually in your body that we've probably not encountered in our younger years. And it's a season that invites us to really go more within. And as you tune in and as you are being gentle and patient with yourself and allowing what feels good to come in, you discover something new about yourself.
Absolutely.
So, before we close, where can listeners find you or learn more about your work?
Mm. So the best place is on my Facebook group called the Midlife Temple. So you go on Facebook, you do the Midlife Temple or Welcome to the Midlife Temple. That is where my live teachings are. There's a beautiful community, very engaged. And it's also where I share the most. And people can find me also on Instagram at the Midlife Temple or at emergence.co, which is my website. And you can send me a DM in Messenger, and you can write me an email at luce, Luce, at emergence.co.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and heart with us today. And to our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend or partner. Conversations like this help us all normalize the changes we go through and approach intimacy with curiosity instead of shame. You can follow Own Your Becoming on Spotify and YouTube and subscribe to my newsletter at ownyourbecoming.com for more insights and upcoming episodes. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself and remember your becoming is your power.